Do you have any sense after seeing the Commanders on kind of what their plan is with Scary Terry?
Yeah, I think that Terry McLaurin's reporting to camp encourages me more than Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals reporting to camp. I think Terry McLaurin wants to be out there. I think he wants to continue what he's doing with Jayden Daniels. And I think his agent was also there the 2 days I was at camp. And so I think that is telling of like there should be conversations going on. If not, why are you out there? It was also a little bit funny because Terry's signing autographs for the fans despite not practicing. And when I sat down with head coach Dan Quinn, he's like, yeah, he's on PUP, like the physically unable to perform list. But, that list and their whole storyline is he's not practicing because he hurt his ankle last season and he's rehabbing it. But Dan Quinn made very clear to me, people could come back from PUP at any time. It's not like IR where you have to be out a certain amount of time. And it's not like our IR where there's all these rules for the ramp up. You can come back and you could go right away if you want to. And I think it was kind of this like hint, like nudge, nudge, he's just fine. So to me, I do think Terry gets done. I think ultimately he's not going to be like a Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase type paid receiver. He's not that caliber of production, and he's also not at their age. Again, going to be 31 this season. I do think that when you get down to DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, that's kind of probably the high end of what we're talking, which is like 30 to 32 a year, maybe some like fake years or at least voidable years thrown in there. And it could be closer to 28. I think there's a very real possibility this stays under 30. I believe he's at 23 right now. And so I do think that's kind of like high 20s. He'll get a raise, he'll get a little more time. And probably if you're the Commanders, you want to say like, hey, let's get you a deal that's like in our mind 28 a year, but maybe it looks like 30 million a year because we tack on some voidable years without guarantees at the end.
The adjustment of funny money is always wild to me. What about the adjustment for Deebo? Obviously, going from San Francisco over to Washington, what's that been like?
Yeah, it was interesting. I talked to Deebo while I was there, and he said the biggest change for him was actually just how much no huddle the Commanders are running under Kliff Kingsbury. I need to look up those numbers because someone told me it was something like 63% of the time last year the Commanders went no huddle and that it was like a league record. And again, I have to look this up. But I think when he looked at that's not what was going on with Kyle Shanahan. They did have that huddle every time. And so for Deebo, that is just a change in rhythm. But that's what Kliff likes. That's what Jayden liked in college. And so that's what they wanted to run with Jayden. And they really had a lot of comfort level with it, both in terms of like clapping and cadences pre-snap that Kliff had done with Kyler Murray and he really liked, and also things Jayden had done at LSU. So I also think there might be a tiny bit of a degree that the Commanders are like, Terry, we have Deebo here. Like, if you're not here, we have another receiver one. But I think in reality, both of them are very good. Neither of them is like bona fide best receiver on any team. And so you really do want to have both guys in that game.
Frank is convinced the Commanders take a step back this year. We all know it. Although, should be noted, he still thinks it's a playoff caliber team. It's just, we've fallen in love. You saw him up close and personal. Like, what's sort of the vibe? Like, what's your sense?
Yeah, I think that this is a team that should be more talented and more fundamentally sound, but not necessarily as good of a record because of the fluke success they had. You're not going to get doinks in all the time. You're not going to get a Bears corner, Bears safety just looking the other way so that you get a Hail Mary, which, by the way, like so many things had to go right. I think last year was the football gods saying, like, thank you for getting Dan Snyder out of here. In exchange, we present to you an NFC championship berth. I also think that the Commanders should be better, and I will say, despite thinking that the Commanders might have a slide back in turn of the records and also, like, it could be a competitive NFC East, we don't know. I believe that Jayden Daniels should be okay. Like, I'm not super concerned about a sophomore slump. I'm curious what you think about this. And maybe it's just because I've been around them a lot and I've talked to a lot of people near him. And so I get a little bit like, oh, I understand what the recipe for success is. But when I talk to people there and I say, why don't you think that defensive coordinators are going to have figured out Jayden, or even to some degree, I mean, with CJ Stroud last year, we saw that there was a little bit of a step back from a production standpoint. But I would argue that Jayden did not have the most talented roster his rookie year. And I think he overperformed relative to the talent. And on the flip side, what Kliff Kingsbury and some of the people there would say is, well, if you have a defense that's figuring out how Jayden operates in structure and solving that, great, he'll go out of structure. If you want to get him out of structure, great. He can throw from the pocket, and he's actually a pocket passer first. He's not escaping all the time, and that was something that he grew on over the year. Dan Quinn, their head coach, will even tell you that usually he looks at players making a second-year jump from year one to year two, but he felt like Jayden on the offensive side of the ball and Mikey Sainristil on the defensive side of the ball kind of self-corrected and made those jumps mid-year, which would suggest like they have a little bit more of that on their shoulders. And Jayden told me that he felt like the game slowed down like 20 times as much from when they first played Tampa in week 1 to when they played Tampa in the playoffs. So I do think there are a lot of ingredients for success that makes me feel good about this offense, about Jayden Daniels. The defense will have questions, but I think there's reason to believe that their talent fits their scheme a little better this year. And then the question to me is just like, okay, you're playing good teams. How do you match up against them?
I think also last year was a masterclass from Kliff Kingsbury on how to call an offense and how to develop a quarterback. So every time we say, well, defensive coordinators have had the whole offseason to get ready for Jayden Daniels, I mean, Kliff Kingsbury has had the whole offseason to figure out how to better utilize Jayden Daniels. Keeping Kliff Kingsbury as an offensive coordinator, I think, was a huge win for this organization simply because remembering the timing that rookies go through, by the time they actually get into OTAs and camp, they've had so little time to actually be professional football players, and they're trying to learn an entirely new language. So Jayden Daniels did all that quickly. The virtual reality, we've seen all those things. You know, obviously he's a wild student, but to me, if you give somebody like Kliff the opportunity now to say, okay, Kliff Kingsbury didn't even really have a chance to design specific for Jayden Daniels. He just had to figure out how to modify what he does to fit Jayden Daniels' strengths early on in the season last year. Now he's had months to sit back and say, okay, I know exactly what Jayden does and what he's comfortable with. There's a huge opportunity when you've got somebody that I think it showed such great ability last year to get the most out of that offense in Jayden. I think Kliff is a cheat code in this process. So you have a wonderfully talented quarterback with an offensive coordinator that has shown the ability to really understand the best way to get the most out of that player. That's dynamic to me. So even with you're right, an improved roster, so we take some of the luck out of it and everything. I just think that who the Commanders were at the end of last year record-wise is actually kind of on par with where I expect them to be moving forward. Like, they got lucky, but now they're better. And so I don't think they have to get lucky to remain in that conversation. Like, I'd be really shocked to see a sophomore slump out of Jayden Daniels, because I just think the pieces around him and the way that they've sort of isolated him in this, like to make him the best he can be. I feel like the Commanders have done a masterful job of surrounding him with what he needs.
I'm so glad you said this, Fitz, because I'm reporting a story on Jayden Daniels, what led to his success, and also the system that the Commanders set up around him that helped him achieve the success he did. I don't want to give away all my tidbits because I'm excited about them, and the story's not coming out till closer to the start of the regular season, so give it a few weeks. But there are like some awesome things that they are doing in that building that I'm just like, I know that we talk on this show all the time about organizations failing quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks in particular. And I just want to be like, here, everyone else, particularly the New York Jets with like half of the last decade, like listen to what the Commanders are doing and consider doing that or a version of that for you too. Because I think there are just so many super sharp systemic things that they put in place that should allow Jayden to succeed. And I will mention that you talk about Kliff Kingsbury. It's a huge one that they got him back. There are a lot of people who thought he would take a head coaching job elsewhere and there would be interest in him. And I don't think that most of them thought that he would get another year with Jayden. And I will also say that Dan Quinn has been very intentional about the staff with the idea that you have Kliff as the offensive coordinator. You have Brian Johnson, the former Eagles offensive coordinator, on that staff. You have Tavita Pritchard at quarterbacks coach, and you have David Blau at assistant quarterbacks coach. First of all of those guys played quarterback at a high level. I think they all played at college. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure they all played in college. Then you get to the point where they're all learning the same system. So the idea is if Kliff takes a head coaching job elsewhere, someone who understands the system and the language could step in as Jayden's next play caller. So there really is this succession plan of like, it's not just let's maximize now and hope Ben Johnson doesn't leave. And again, I think the Lions have a little bit of a difference because of the run game coordinator, but there is an element of establishing a consistent system for Jayden Daniels' entire career.
By the way, according to ChatGPT, last year, the Washington Commanders run approximately 64% of their offensive snaps were run out of no huddle. And yes, that would be the highest percentage in modern NFL history. Of course, Buffalo in the early 90s used a K-gun. In 1988, Cincinnati went they went no huddle, but nothing was charted back then to have those numbers. So yes, according to ChatGPT, at least
ChatGPT and Davida Pritchard are on the same page. That's good to know.
There we go. Well, I'm a ChatGPT guy now. Like I just run everything through ChatGPT. It tells me how to live my life. It tells me that information is correct. I'm just here. I'm here to be a beacon of research. Really, I'm just here to type it into a little computer that tells me everything I need to know.